You're not a cook. Yeah, well, I also cook. I'm Liam, this is Rob, and welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. Despite loving 80s and 90s cinema, despite loving action movies, and despite posting the 150 movie podcast, I have never, quite inexplicably, seen a Steven Seagal movie. Okay, I've seen Executive Decision, but I'm not convinced that counts at all. Either way, though, I've now put that egregious oversight to bed, as this week we watched the partly brilliant, partly terrible, but all enjoyable Under Siege. Considered by many to be Seagal's best work, this die-hard a boat movie might fall short of the genre's finest. With some cool Aikido moves, some massive performances, here's looking at you, Busey and Tommy Lee Jones, a moment of wonderfully egregious nudity, and a very unexpected but very awesome throat rip. Under Siege nonetheless delivers one of the most stupidly fun action movies of the 90s. So yeah, Rob, this is my first Seagal movie. I'm not counting Executive Decision because he gets killed off so early in the movie. Spoiler alert. This very much isn't your first rodeo, is it, when it comes to Steven Seagal?
No, when I was growing up, Seagal was up there. I'd say up there. I mean, I've seen the Seagal films. It was always in the talks, Seagal with Van Damme as the lesser.
He's always second here, yeah.
Yeah, but they were the lesser.
Van Damme guy.
Yeah, the lesser action heroes of the 80s and 90s.
So they were very much the, and I know you don't like a football analogy, but this you should at least get this. They were very much the championship teams of action movies. They were the Norwiches and the Bournemouth. I know, sorry, that's a bad example because Bournemouth are in the Premier League now, but they were the smaller clubs fighting out to kind of get into that top tier. And arguably, this is as close, I would say, as anyone made it. Like you can make, obviously there was like Jean-Claude Van Damme with Universal Soldier and stuff. But in 1992, and with this movie in particular, which, make no mistake, was a massive hit, Seagal was arguably knocking on the door of the big time, the major problem being that he was a fucking douchebag.
Well, to the point where this film, and I'm surprised at this, had Oscar nominations. But
I have seen it. They were both for sound design. But
yeah. But it's still,
the fact that it was in the conversation.
It's the only film he's ever had that's had an Oscar nomination. But for me, I had fond memories of Under Siege. I haven't seen it for a long time. It's when you start getting to the itness of Seagal in his personal life. And because this is the first Seagal one we've ever done, we are going to get to the fact of how he used to cast his female counterparts.
Oh, yeah. There's some issues with Seagal as a human, even beyond the whole sexual stuff. Like, he's a fucking lunatic. I mean, there's all the Putin stuff. Like, he just hangs around with Vladimir Putin, which is beyond bonkers nowadays. Yeah. And it was just like, it's easy to forget that he was on a TV show called Steven Seagal Lawman, where he's just like, out of nowhere, I make a living in movies, but for the last 20 years, I've also been a cop. I'm Steven Seagal. That's right, Steven Seagal, deputy sheriff. And you're like, you've been a cop for the last 20 years? No fucking way have you been a cop for the last 20 years.
Apparently, for 20 years, he was a deputy sheriff in his hometown, where he lived.
In Louisiana.
Yeah.
So how fucking insane is that? Like, you could be arrested by fucking Steven Seagal. And he just keeps on the down low. And then one day he's like, I'm going to make a TV show about this. About what? About me being a cop. It's like, oh, you want to be a cop? No, I'm already a cop. Oh, Steven, you fucking lunatic. There's no way you're a cop. Yeah, dude, he's a cop. And in fairness, though, that's the difference between Steven Seagal, whatever you might say about him, and there's plenty to say about Steven Seagal, the difference he had compared to the other guys, I think, was a legitimacy. Like, obviously, Jean-Claude had all the moves and stuff. And, Schwarzenegger was massive. And I'm not sure if we just bought into his bullshit. But this whole idea of him being, certainly when I was younger, a 7th Dan black belt in Aikido, it's like that was the big thing. And you saw him do these moves and you're just like, I actually bought into the idea that he would be able to whoop your ass.
I'm wondering if he goes a bit Frank Dukes with his memories of training in Japan and things like that.
That might be the case, but there's something about the way he carries him. Put it this way, even to this day, right? And I'm not talking about 70-year-old versions. If you said, all right, you can fight, like proper fight, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, Jean-Claude Van Damme, or Steven Seagal, like 1992 version, he's last on the list I want to fight. Because he is a fucking big guy. And he's not just big, like he's old-fashioned muscle man big. Like all these other guys, they're all ripped and stuff. I love the fact that he's just carrying a bit of timber. Like even this is his peak. He's like old-fashioned. Like he goes to the gym, but he smashes the food. He loves the booze. So he's always got a bit of a belly on him. And I fucking love that.
It's nothing to do about his size or anything like that. It's the look in his eyes. He's the
Mhm.
one out of them all who is probably going to kill you. Like,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
can see that in his face. Anyway, let's get back. Yeah, we gone too much onto Seagal. Let's get back to the film, to my rewatching, right?
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
something I've never noticed, and I wish I did notice, but I'm gonna blame just me being, I guess, misogynistic when I watched this film previously. I want
Which
to
is,
read
well,
something.
just be
Let me
clear,
read some, hang on,
is
let me read
completely
something before you jump
reasonable.
onto it. Let me read something to
Yeah,
you.
I'm just saying,
Right.
it's completely reasonable to be.
Many women have served in the United States Navy for over a century. I
Mhm.
guess except for the USS Missouri.
Mhm, mhm.
Because when I watched this film before, I've never noticed it until this watching, that Erica Elionak is the only female on this ship,
Mhm, mhm.
unless you count Gary Busey in drag. Which, by the
Oh.
way, I totally understand the fact that Gary Busey came up with that himself. Of course,
Oh,
Gary
that.
Busey came up with that himself.
So of course he did. I was watching this film, and again, you have to remember this is the first time I'm watching this film, and I'm just like, wow, Gary Busey's in drag. And then it kept going. I'm just like, at some point, they're going to explain why Gary Busey's in drag, right? No, no, they're not going to explain why Gary Busey's in drag. It's just Gary Busey being a fucking lunatic. There is no reason at all for him to be in
Gary
drag.
Busey came home after a night out, dressed in drag, and just said, "You know what? I'm going with it. This is today's acting."
Wonderful. Oh, I love that. This is today's acting. I woke up today and chose drag. That's what I fucking did. Such a Gary Busey move. Like there is no explanation for it. It's completely unnecessary. But because it's Gary Busey, you're just like, ah, kind of works. It just kind of works. And he is, I thought going into this, we might get the kind of old school Buddy Holly kind of, proper act. It's easy to forget that
Yeah,
Gary Busey, because you see him now, and he's got the teeth, and one of his eyes always looks more open than the other. And he just, he's really leaned into the whole idea that I'm a fucking lunatic. But there were a few years where Gary Busey was a really serious actor,
yeah.
like a very good actor. And he slowly became more and more bonkers. And I'm not sure if he just kind of leaned into it or did that Al Pacino thing of just becoming louder. I thought we were going to get kind of earlier career Gary Busey. And then all of a sudden he's in drag. And I'm like, oh, no, we're getting bonkers Gary Busey. And
Yeah.
in fairness, it does work for the character because I think the character obviously is supposed to be a bit of a lunatic. So it works. But between him and Tommy Lee Jones, there's a lot of acting in this
Oh,
film.
there's a lot going on, and it's totally different acting choices as well, which we need to get into a bit more. But let's stick with the Steven Seagal for a minute.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah.
get him out of the way because I wrote down I hate the way he holds a gun, but then I actually changed that note to I hate the way anybody in this film holds a gun.
Yeah, there's a
What are they
few, right?
doing with these guns?
Right. There's right. Firstly, just across the board, and it's not just guns. That the extras in this movie are some of the worst extras I have ever seen in any movie. Anyone who's asked to act for even a moment, and I don't mean given a line, just be a human being on screen. They're just incapable. They can't hold guns, despite the fact they're all on a military ship. The only thing that kind of makes up for it is Steven Seagal going full cross-hand Uzis, which was very like because make no mistake, the Uzis are the quintessential 90s gun. They kind of gone out of fashion alongside, and it brought up in this film, Navy SEALs. It felt like Navy SEAls were a big deal in the 90s. There was
Yeah,
a Navy SEAls movie with Michael Bain and
Charlie
help me.
Sheen.
Of course, you'd know the answer to that classic. I bet you've seen Navy SEAls like 6 times, right?
Love Navy
Oh,
SEAls.
oh,
I
of
love
course you
Navy
have.
SEAls.
I would have bet 90% on my shit on that. So yeah, the Navy SEALs in general felt like a big deal in the 90s, and so did the Uzis, which I feel like have fallen out of favor. And seeing Steven Seagal doing the cross-armed Uzi shootout scene kind of makes up for the fact that a lot of the action scenes are actually a little bit shit in this film.
Yeah, they're a little bit crap. They don't make sense. But it was a lot of the things that Seagal did with his hands. Like he didn't know what to do with his hands. There was the scene where he's setting up the sat phone, right, or whatever he called
Mm-hmm,
it, and he's
mm-hmm.
explaining it to her. And then he just run his hand over it, like he was, I don't know, willing it to turn on. And then he did a lot of things with his hands that were just weird for me. And what I loved about this entire ship was they locked everybody in the hold and they did all that.
Mm-hmm.
But then Seagal and Jordan had free
Mm-hmm.
reign. The ship, where to the point
Yeah.
they were able to scream and bang. Like she did a lot of noise. The cake turned on. She jumped out of the cake. That was very
Yeah, I
provocative.
noticed that bit. Yeah, I noticed
Yeah,
that bit.
yeah. Then he locks her in the locker. He locks her in the
Mm-hmm.
locker. She bangs like shit. That's fine. They talk about it. They even, I'm guessing, spent about 4.5 hours doing the bomb, where he was
Mm-hmm.
able to melt the tip of the warhead or whatever it was to make the plastic explosive.
There's a whole bunch of things. Like, where did he get the plasma torch from when he suddenly needed to get the guys out? It's just like, oh, there's a door. Luckily, there's a plasma torch. It was one of the most video gamey moments. But to bring it back, and it's one of the issues with the film, and I don't want to shit on this film totally because it is well shot, and despite the big performances, the performances are, if nothing else, fun. Even Seagal, who will again we're ragging on, I actually think he's a decent enough actor, and I think he's actually quite good.
Fair, he has you've picked the better film of the like, Marked for Death, where he goes up against the Jamaican Yardies, is strange.
Hard to Kill is another one. But when you check it out, like, this is directed by Andrew Davis. And most people, I think, would consider he directed his two best films, because he did Above the Law, or as we know it, Nico, and he directed this. And then, like, you know, I think most lists have those two as the top film, where some people would, the movies you already mentioned there, Marked for Death and Hard to Kill, would be in the conversation.
I argue Seagal's best film is On Deadly Ground, that he directed. Because
I want to see that. I really want to see that.
Oh my God. It's funny for reasons it shouldn't be funny.
But that's the thing, like, here, he's got like a decent director. Like, he's another one of those directors. You probably wouldn't know Andrew Davis's name. And his movies, none of them necessarily massive, but there's some, like, you know, he did Above the Law, obviously, Chain Reaction in 96, he did Perfect Murder in 98, Collateral Damage in 02, which is an okay-ish Schwarzenegger film. He got a bad rap. He did Holes with Shia LaBeouf, which is actually a pretty good film. He did The Guardian, which is one of those weird movies that everyone has forgotten. It was the one with Costner and Aston Kutcher. Is that his name?
Oh,
Aston Kutcher, is that his name?
I know, you know, the guy from that 70s show.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name now.
The first name, I feel like I fucked it up. Anton Kutcher? Aston Kutcher? Gee, I've definitely fucked up his first name. You have to save me on this one. But anyway, the fact is, the big thing... Ashton Kutcher. Well, that was close. But what was it? Harrison Ford watched the rough cuts for this movie and liked it enough that he got the job on The Fugitive the next year.
Watching Under Siege convinced him to take the fugitive role.
Yeah, but it worked. Like, fucking that is, I mean, outside of, you know, Indiana Jones and Han Solo, that's probably his biggest movie. Like, that sounds like a ridiculous, but it's easy to forget just how massive The Fugitive was in 1993. It was an absolute monster of a movie, and it was directed by Andrew Davis because of the work he did in this film. And you can see, if you wanted to pick out the positives to this film, there are plenty to take, but I'm still not 100% convinced why Harrison Ford would watch this film and go, yeah, this is the guy. Because to bring it back to your point from a moment ago, and it's the difference, which, you know, I mentioned in the intro, that this isn't quite amongst the genre greats. And one of the issues, and why it doesn't kind of hold up to, say, Die Hard, and it is going for the whole Die Hard thing. It even has the whole explosion where he jumps off the boat, which is, let's be clear, not as exciting as, you know, Bruce Willis jumping off Nakatomi Plaza. But one thing that Die Hard has, I mean, don't get me wrong, the Die Hard's a much better film than this for many reasons, but you always got the geography of the building with Nakatomi Plaza. You always knew where he was. And like you said, the idea that he was hiding, that you had to be careful, and you never had to ask where you were. Like, with this movie, as you say, they have the run of the ship. I never get a proper feeling for the geography of the Missouri at all. It's just people wandering around. I never know why they can hear them, why they can't, what the rules are. It's very wishy-washy in that regard.
Which is really weird, because apparently throughout this entire ship, they've designed a rail system to move the weapons, right? First of all, where did they get the rails from?
Nobody knows. Why did they really need the rails to be an important part of the plot? Really?
It was all, right, just for the line, time is money. I am arguing.
I think it might be right.
It was for the line, time is money. Do you know what I loved as well? They set Seagal, or Casey, and I said it last week, take anything away from Steven Seagal, he has some of the best names in film history. Casey Ryback. On Deadly Ground, his name is Forrest something. But I loved when he's just being anchored or whatever it was. They ripped his wetsuit a little bit, but it caused him to all of a sudden nearly die. And you've got Colm Meaney comes up to him and he goes, "You're incredible, Ryback." Why is he incredible? He hasn't done much since that point.
They're so weird.
Incredible.
Another one of the issues, like, you suddenly have these moments with bad guys which are beyond not earned because they literally haven't had any interaction. So, like you say, they suddenly have that interaction where he has a perfect opportunity to just shoot him dead,
Yeah.
and he just doesn't do it. Instead, they have this monologue moment. And then later on, obviously, with Tommy Lee Jones, the same thing. He has him dead to rights. Pull the trick. I'm going full Scott Evil here from Austin Powers. Shoot him. Done, dead, get on with our fucking day. Instead, they have a big speech, and then they try and add like drama and emotions which aren't there. Like, the whole, I don't get what the whole, we know each other. Like, why do you know each other? Why do you care?
Why do you need to know each other? Why do you need to have some sort of personal history that hasn't been brought up throughout the rest of the film?
Exactly. I'm for the idea of having some kind of personal attachment, but you've got to establish it before the final scene of the film. You can't just have them next to each other and suddenly, this matters, because they've not even, at least, again, to bring it back to Die Hard, I can't help with the comparisons, but, they have the conversations over the phone. You build up that relationship, why he's driving him crazy, blah, blah, blah. With this, there's no interactions, and then suddenly it matters when they're on screen together. And that stuff just doesn't work at all.
Yeah, but dude, you can honestly make those comparisons because even the trailer says Die Hard on a boat. Like, it literally comes up and says Die Hard on the trailer. So you're gonna know, sorry, the video cassette trailer. Do you know?
Of course,
do you know when you used to watch VHS tapes from you used to rent them and you'd have the trailers at the beginning?
Loved them.
Absolutely loved them. And I remember it saying Die Hard on a boat, but it was absolutely. It was one of the first ones to do it, wasn't it? And then that went on, like that trope went on forever. Die Hard on this.
There was a good 7-8 years of Die, and it's never really gone away because Die Hard is so synonymous with the genre and so synonymous with like a kind of elevator pitch. It's just like if there's an action movie in a place, it's just Die Hard on a
Die Hard on that place.
Die Hard on a plane. Die Hard on a boat. Die Hard in a different build. That's all the raid is. It's the same thing. It can't be helped.
You said, and you said it perfectly earlier on. You said that the extras in this didn't know how to act human. No more so than Cue Ball.
Yeah,
I didn't get Cue Ball. Like, they just keep bringing, like, he's meant to be this big thing. Cue Ball, do some moves, and at the end, Cue Ball, do some moves, and then Seagal goes, "I got a move for you," and he kisses Jordan.
Only there. Hey, Kay, show me a move. Here's one move. And then he kisses it. And it's so gross in front of all the dudes. And then it so clumsily then cuts to that final scene where he's like, saluting. And for some odd reason, Eric Eleniak is dressed like a fucking sailor.
Why? Because she joined the Navy all of a sudden. Did this make her join the Navy? The only woman in the Navy, apparently, according to Under Siege. Right at the end, when you had Case show us a move and he goes, "Here's a move for you." My note just went, Steven Seagal with women makes me feel icky. I don't know why. It just makes me feel wrong.
But then at the same time, he's the only guy I think who delivered the line without any sense of humor saying, "I need 50 gallons of bouillabaisse." It's like, what the fuck? He's on like a military ship and he needs 50 gallons of bouillabaisse. Do you know what bouillabaisse is? It's classic French fish soup. Who the fuck is giving 500 sailors fish soup for a party?
That's right, because the captain goes, "Well, it's not for me, you see. It's for the men. They love that stuff."
Sure. Oh yeah, of course. All the men love French fish soup. But the thing is, though, he does get away with it, and it's the same with like the comedy in this film. And to bring it back to his whole like final line, here's a move and he kisses her. There are a bunch of lines delivered in this movie. And the way people react suggests that there's been a joke told, but there's been no joke written.
No.
It's just fucking Ryback saying something. The only thing that makes it work is that he has such a presence that I believe the other guys would act that way around him. Like whatever you might say about someone like Donald Trump, like I can imagine he would walk into a room and for better and for worse, he would own that room. That's what I imagine. I bet you Steven Seagal, when he walks into a room, he just stops everyone dead.
Yeah.
Like in his own weird way, because he would be so fucking confident and so weird that you don't know how to interact with him as a human being. So, all these guys, it's almost like high school rules. It's like, oh, make sure you laugh at what Ryback says, because, he might actually fucking kill us. I just think he's got that kind of vibe. But that whole thing about, to bring back to his like physicality and the way he carries himself, and the idea that he might actually just kick everyone's ass. I'm like, I kind of buy it. And that, as someone read it, like, obviously I know who Steven Seagal is and I've seen bits, but this being my first Steven Seagal film, I do think he has that, like, maybe something that Schwarzenegger didn't have, because obviously he's got his own unique screen presence. But I do genuinely, whether it's bullshit or not, believe him as an actual badass in his own unique way, I suppose. Despite the fact that he just waves his arms around. Maybe it's because we don't understand how it works, like Aikido, where we're just like...
I said that for years when I watched Steven Seagal films back in the 80s, 90s. He's never lifted his leg once. Like, it's just...
Not very high.
No, but you mentioned him being a cook, right? He is a cook on a battleship. So it's an industrial kitchen, right? They're cooking for, I don't know, 300, 400 people. Yeah. But he made 3 pies.
3 fucking pies.
Get my pies out of the oven.
You only need 3 pies if you've got 50 gallons of bouillabaisse, you know?
Oh, do you mean...
What the fuck, dude?
You mean bouillabaisse that smells like a lard omelette?
Oh my God, this is so weird. Although, I'll get to favorite scenes in a moment. I'll leave that. But before we get to Tommy Lee Jones, you mentioned Erika Eleniak, and obviously we're going to have to talk about her because, one thing I did know about, the 2 things I knew about this film, I'll say 3, sorry, was Tommy Lee Jones's getup, which we'll get to in a moment, the fact that he's a cook, obviously, and Erika Eleniak jumping out of a cake.
Yeah.
And in fairness, like last week when we did Idle Hands, I'm going to be misogynistic here, but this film does encourage it because this film is misogynistic as fuck. Like, when she comes onto the boat, it is like the ultimate male gaze moment. Only it's 700 male gazes, and you're getting them all at once, and it's just a tit. There's one scene where it's just looking at her ass for like a good 20 seconds. And this isn't just some woman they brought on as eye candy. I know she is that to a certain extent. She is like, what, the 4th lead of this film? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, she is billed right after Tommy Lee Jones and right before Damien Chapa as tackle.
Oh, well, there we go.
The guy that does the ironing, right? Who I only recognize him from 2 other films. Ken, sorry, we'll get back to Erika Eleniak.
No, it's fine.
He was Ken in Street Fighter.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. And he played a half Mexican, half white guy in Blood In, Blood Out. I don't know if you ever saw that 3-hour film, Blood In, Blood Out, with Benjamin Bratt.
I did not watch that. I'm still dealing mentally with the fact that was Ken from Street Fighter. I'm like, as soon as you said it, I was like, of course that was fucking Ken from Street Fighter. And he was terrible in Street Fighter too. Yeah. And he's, make no mistake, shit in this. I do not like him in this film. He's his whole character is just, I'm going to be a bit cowardly. That's it. Feels completely pointless in this film.
When you jump out of a cake, though, do you have your eyes closed for the entire moment?
It's strange. It is strange. It doesn't really matter because, again, like last week when we did Idle Hands, this is another example. I am going to be an egregious misogynistic male here, but I am a red-blooded male. Like, let's not pretend we weren't all watching this scene going, oh, here's that scene coming. She has an absolutely fantastic set of tits. There's just no two ways about it. Because I'm not actually, bizarre as it is, because Erika Eleniak was my, Baywatch girl. Everyone had a Baywatch girl, Pam Anderson. For me, it was Erika Eleniak. Bizarrely, I've literally never seen this cake scene. And when she jumped out, I was like, God damn, she is smoking hot. And it's a shame that 5 minutes later, they decide to dress her up like a 10-year-old boy pretending to be a soldier with the cap and the hair. It goes like full Bart Simpson. I was just like, this is really odd.
So she was actually real life Playboy Playmate of the Year 1989.
Yeah, with the issue that they actually have in the movie and they keep referencing, she was actually the centerfold for that very famous 1989, I think it's June or July, whatever issue it is. So it is an actually oddly meta moment in this film that she's referencing her Playboy spread and pretending that the character was actually in that issue. It's very bizarre. But it's weird because obviously at the start, she's kind of set up as being just complete eye candy. She jumps out the cake. It's like, my God, she is smoking hot. Then immediately, for no apparent reason, he gives her an assault rifle, which is bananas.
His explanation was, the way he talked down to her. Full auto, semi-auto, 1 shot at a time. That's what I want to give you. I want you to expend 1 shot at a time. Like, dude.
Yeah, but usually, right,
why are you giving her
the talking? But then the talking down to is usually followed by someone giving you a handgun. Like, this is the safety, this is the thing. But he gives a fully automatic assault rifle. I'm just like, why are you giving this woman who clearly wants no part of it an assault rifle? It's like, oh, okay, I know you don't want a gun, but just hold this bazooka in case shit goes off, But the fact is, I actually thought she was quite good in this movie. I thought
She
she was a
was.
pretty good actress. I
Yeah.
thought, again, compared to some of the bigger performances, it's easy for her to kind of fall into the background. I think she actually did an amazing job of creating a little bit of chemistry with a man who I suspect it's very hard to extract chemistry from. Like, other than that final scene when he kisses her, which is gross, for the rest of it, I actually didn't mind them as a kind of like blossoming relationship. I never really bought into it, but for the most part, she kind of made it work. And make no mistake, she made it work. It wasn't fucking Seagal.
She probably thought, well, if I had to suck his dick to get this part, then I'm gonna get the best of it. I'm
I hope
sorry.
she didn't.
That is
I
a bit
hope she
egregious.
didn't.
I do apologize,
I
but
was. I mean, I thought I was
Pamela,
at the levels of misogyny on this podcast, and you went just immediately to sucking Steven Seagal's dick.
Pamela Anderson turned around and said she was up for the role, but refused Seagal's sexual advances to get it.
So you have something to back that up, in fairness. So you haven't just pulled that out of the air, in fairness.
So how did Erica Elinak get the part? I'm sorry. I'm not saying it happened. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no smoke without fire and stuff. He
is notorious for dropping his pants to make sure they have on-screen chemistry, as he said in the past.
Oh my God. And that is the thing, and this isn't like, talking down or criticizing Erica Eleniak. This is very much going after Steven Seagal. He totally seems like the guy who would make a woman suck his dick to get a role. He just seems like the fact. I think the fact that he's in Russia has probably saved him from the Me Too movement, to put it that way. Yeah. I think he's one of those. But to get on to safer and much more amusing grounds, Tommy Lee Jones in this movie. So it's easy to forget now because obviously he's an Oscar-winning actor, very well regarded, highly regarded, sorry. But he has given some really big performances in his career. The obvious being Two-Face in Batman Forever, which is a ginormous performance. Yeah. This runs it pretty close. So I have a lot of questions about Tommy Lee Jones. Firstly, what is Tommy Jones supposed to? Is he supposed to be a compere? Is he a rapper in this group? I don't know what his role is. Equally,
I think he's the hype man.
He is the. So that's what I mean. You said that with a straight face. Tommy Lee Jones is the hype man. How fucking bonkers is that sentence? But that's exactly what he is in this film. And what era is he from? Like, I don't.
He says it though. He says it, doesn't he? He's still firmly stuck in the 70s.
Yeah, well, I do. Does this look belong in the set? Like he's wearing a tie-dye t-shirt, a leather-studded jacket with a headband and sunglasses. Beyond the fact that his costume changes, as far as I could tell, 4 times in 10 minutes. I think it actually might be less than 10 minutes. I was watching the film. I'm just like, his outfit keeps changing. Like his t-shirt, he's suddenly wearing a jumper. The headband disappears. I looked it up. Supposedly, it is down as an official goof in this movie that his costume changes like 4 times in like 7 minutes in this film. I was like, I'm going fucking bananas here. What's going on with this outfit? But that whole look of headband, glasses, leather-studded jacket, occasionally tie-dye t-shirt. He says he's from the 70s. That I don't think that look belonged in the 70s. But then equally, I'm not convinced it belonged in the 80s or the 90s.
Oh, dude.
I think it just belonged in 1992 on the Missouri in Under Siege. That's it.
He is still he's full of LSD, isn't he? So he doesn't know what he's doing. What I think is bonkers, you mentioned everything about Tommy Lee Jones. You didn't mention he went from JFK to this film.
Yeah, and equally as bonkers, the fact that he was 44. I'm about to turn 42. So when this film was made, I was just over 3 years younger than he was when he made this film. He looks 78 years old. I know he's wearing a headband and sunglasses. Tommy Lee Jones has never, ever looked young.
Yeah, he looks like he's lived a hard life. And I suppose
100%.
being the CIA's go-to guy for stealing North Korean submarines.
Yeah, right. How do you feel? Because you've seen this movie a lot more than me.
Yeah.
The second half, because for 60 minutes, I would argue that, and maybe this film is actually at its best, when it's not really an action movie, it's more of a thriller. Because for this, like a 60-minute spell, when this is Tommy Lee Jones's movie and just Steven Seagal's in it, in the last quarter, I'd say, last third, maybe, Steven Seagal very much becomes the star of the film. But there is a long-ass stretch when this feels like a Tommy Lee Jones movie. And it doesn't have all the action associated with it. It feels much more like one of those many 90s kind of, I guess you call it an action thriller rather than a true action movie. But when the storyline comes to fruition at the end, I'm still not quite sure why Tommy Lee Jones wants to do any of this. I'm not sure why Gary Busey is involved at all. I still don't know why Erica Leniak was on the plane with them to be in the cake. I just don't know why that was a thing. And I don't know why they were working with Italians, like Italians of all people. Why? What? When you think of terrorists, I don't think of Italians. It was just all very strange. The kind of ending.
It's subtle, but the links are there. So it's all down to Nick Mancuso, who plays Tom Breaker. He's the CIA guy at the big ass table.
Yeah.
So Stranix, Tommy Lee Jones,
the guy who's always sweating, and smoking.
Yeah, the guy who was going to blame it on the cook. Oh, that's fine. We can just blame all this on the cook.
Yeah, naturally.
So he uses him as his wet work guy, then realizes he's getting a bit too out of control. So he sends a bunch of guys down to Miami to kill him. So at that point, then Mannix decides, you know what? I've done enough for my country. I'm going to get some money.
Is it Mannix or Stranix?
Stranix, sorry. Stranix.
That's all right. No, it's Stranix.
So he's
it's okay to get this wrong. You are literally explaining the plot to somebody who just watched the film. So thank you very much.
He said, I've done enough for this company. I'm going to get I've done enough for the country. I'm going to get my money back. Or
yeah.
So then you found out then they're going to take the Missouri and decommission it. So so what better way to take the warheads from him? And he's probably found then Gary Busey, who is the guy who feels like he deserves more. Gary Busey does strike that thing where he does, doesn't he? He reads his own personnel file where the captain says,
It's just a big jump between I deserve a promotion to I'm going to steal nuclear warheads.
And that's why they got the right guy for it. They got the right guy for it. You look at Gary Busey and you go, you know what? That guy will turn.
Yeah, that is the thing, because on paper, like, his motivations don't make any sense, but because it's Gary Busey giving that performance, you're like, but I get why he's just a lunatic, basically.
And I'm assuming the fact that then you had the French guys, you had they're all mercenaries that have been hired on a promise of a payday.
They were Italian, weren't they?
Some were Italian. I think there was a French.
Maybe some were French. I just remember hearing a lot of Italian names, and I might be missing things because I was trying to run through it. Because
Colomini was Irish, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, why was he Irish? I guess the whole East Coast American thing, you can just be like, whatever. But there was just like a moment where he's talking to like the war room, Stranix this is, and he's saying, oh, this is why I'm upset. And then they almost have a conversation afterwards, like, oh, do you think they bought it? Like, that really wasn't what it was all about. But then as the film went on, I'm like, it kind of feels like that's exactly what this was all about. The fact that he tried to kill him and tried to turn him. So I was just a bit confused. And by the end, I don't think I really cared. But I think I was more upset. And it was the scene you already mentioned, was the scene where Ryback got his shoulder cut. That felt like such an awkward and overly kind of produced action sequence. And, we'd had a few beforehand, like the stuff with the girders. Again, I felt like there was too much girder chat in this movie. But, Ryback did have a few moments in this film to be a badass. Like there was the moment with Gary Busey where he just kicked a bunch of guys' asses. There was a scene when he goes in, smokes it, like he just walks into the middle of the room. Like he feels like he's got the drop on him, but then he walks into the middle of the room, gets caught, and then fights them off. And you're like, well, that was a bit silly. But then it ends with him just randomly ripping a dude's throat out, which felt like egregiously violent in a movie which isn't actually that violent for the most part.
He had just watched Roadhouse the day before, and he thought, you know what, I can do that better.
100%. And it was pretty badass. And I was just like, it would have been better if he got injured in like a traditional shootout rather than that weird underwater sequence where he just suddenly had a wetsuit and it felt like he was jumping around a bit. And the whole, is the actor Colm Meaney, is that his name?
Colm Meaney, yeah.
Colm Meaney. Like that whole showdown with him just felt like, well, we've got Colm Meaney in this film. We're going to have a moment. It just didn't really work. And even, as I said, the last sequence with him and Tommy Lee Jones, it was kind of fun. It was also kind of stupid.
It was just very odd as well. When she gets him back, like she's able then to pick him up, have no problems then getting him back to their secret room that isn't really secret.
Yeah.
And then have enough time to nurse him back to health. Hang in there, Casey.
You got to remember.
Hang in there, Casey.
She's basically, at this point, she's just become a badass. There's no build-up. He gives her an assault rifle. She's terrified of the whole situation. Totally understandable. She hides a bit. Then all of a sudden, she kills him. Just, all of a sudden, she's just happy, just mowing folk down. And then she just turns into a badass right towards the end of the film when she's like, no, I want to get involved in all this stuff. And it just doesn't feel like there's any build-up to that. It's just like she doesn't want to be involved for obvious reasons because, she's a glamour model or whatever. And then all of a sudden, she's just totally comfortable, just, with the assault rifle and mowing down bad guys. I mean, don't be wrong, totally inept bad guys, but they set that up early in the film. They're like, the moment that they find out that Ryback is going to be a handful, they're like, dude, this guy's like an ex-Navy SEAL. He's got all these awards. Like, oh, no. Gary Busey in his one moment of common sense is like, we need to send down like a fucking team to smoke this guy. And Tommy Lee Jones inexplicably is like, no. I'm going to send down my two most inept guys. How big did you say this Ryback is? I don't know. He's about 6'6", weighs about 19 stone.
I wrote that down. Let's send the 4-foot guy.
Dude, he's like the smallest guy. He's so tiny. And it was just like, why did you send your two most, not only inept, but smallest guys to go and fight one of the largest human beings in history? It's
what happened to Gary Busey as well? Because throughout the beginning of the film, he's just a cook. He's just a pain in the ass. He's just a prick. He's just a cook. I can deal with him. He's just a cook. All of a sudden then, you could have sent more men. I told you to send more men. What was that about? And I loved it that he's just a cook. He's good with cooking knives. That line was fantastic. What does that mean?
A lot of great lines in this film. I mean, in fairness, I'm not sure if they're great lines or if Busey just makes one of them. Like when he spits in the famous bouillabaisse.
Oh, the lard omelette.
The all-time best spits in movie history. And then he goes up to the soldier. He's an extreme psycho. He hates officers. He hates America. It's like, yeah, sure. Why not just go with that? I was going to say he spits the lines out. He literally spat in the bouillabaisse. But Gary Busey, I don't think his character makes any sense. Do I love Gary Busey in this film? Absolutely. And
that's the thing in it. I mean, you have to love Gary Busey in most films because Gary Busey is just being Gary Busey. And it's some of the best you've ever seen. Like seeing him in like Point Break and things. He's gone. But he's gone another level in this film.
Oh yeah. This is a different film. Like he's been let off the leash. You can see don't get me wrong. It's a big performance in Point Break, but it's getting the best out. It's getting that balance between the fact that you've got a genuinely, again, good actor, but this big performance, and they rein him in just enough, and that's why I love him so much in Point Break. This is a little bit more on the clownish side of things.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's, like with Tommy Lee Jones and Batman Forever, to bring it back to that, his performance is so big. And you can blame it at least partially on the fact that he's acting alongside peak Jim Carrey. And he's obviously trying to meet his energy. Basically, you've got two guys on screen. You've got Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey. And I don't know who is leading who into this increasingly gigantic performance in the same way you had fucking John Travolta and Nicolas Cage basically one-upping each other all the way through Face Off until by the end of the film, you're like, this is absolutely insane.
Oh,
I get the impression they're both trying to meet each other's performances and they keep getting bigger and bigger. And that's the only way I can explain Tommy Lee Jones acting like a fucking psycho for most of this film.
Just off screen, Tommy Lee Jones must have had a personal cocaine assistant just to keep up with Gary Busey.
He must have, and one of it, basically, right, his performance is massive all the way through this film, and then all of a sudden, he has this bizarre speech which feels totally off the cuff about Saturday morning cartoons.
Yes,
and from that point, he is away with the fucking fairies for the rest of the film.
You know what I wanted to answer? I know we need to move on as well because I know time's running short, but what I loved is they put most of the crew in the hold and they started drowning them.
Yeah.
But they decided these 6 people weren't worth the effort, so they just sealed them in a room.
Yeah, that felt like, you could feel the script working, couldn't you? There was no reason. One, there was no reason for them to be in the room, and then 2, there was no reason for there to be a plasma torch next to the door. It was just, listen, we need a few people to help. Apparently, Steven Seagal for the end of this movie.
We need a guy who's not part of the crew. For some reason, is on this ship. Like, did he stow away after the George Bush address? Because he used to be a gunner's mate. Oh, the only guy that can use the gun that will sink the submarine.
So bizarre.
Where did he come from? Why was he left on the ship?
It makes no sense. That is something interesting. I brought it up. The fact that they got George Bush Sr. in this movie, it feels like he's part of the movie. It doesn't feel like they actually filmed it. It was like they were using TV footage.
It was part of the 1991 Pearl Harbor address. So they have used, but it does feel, they've integrated it really well.
Yeah. And the thing is, I mean, you don't get many films nowadays where you get like proper military porn. Like the closest thing you get to it nowadays is Michael Bay, but arguably he hasn't actually done it for a while himself. But this film, especially at the start, goes full military US gung ho point in a way that you maybe can't do nowadays without feeling a little bit Trumpian. Like, and I don't mean that in a good or bad way. This isn't a political statement. I'm just saying there's too much of a split, and some people kind of get their back up to the whole, gung ho team. Team America kind of ruined it in a certain respect. But this is old school, and even with the ship itself. And I know you're not a Star Trek fan, but with the Missouri, they go full Starship Enterprise from Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Now, I'm not sure if you've seen that film, but the opening shot of the Enterprise in that movie lasts about 3.5 minutes, and it's basically going, check out the ship, and they just keep cutting around it, and it's got the music. This is the closest I've seen to that in quite a while, where they're like, dude, we've got the Missouri, we're gonna fucking show you the Missouri. It's just like the cameras on it, we're gonna show it from every angle, and then
do you know why they had
inside
to do
the
that?
ship. I don't know what's going on.
Why they had to do that?
No.
Because they did take shots of the actual Missouri, and then they had to film it on another battleship.
So, such a shame. Get your money's worth. We've got like when you get like an A-list actor and you have him for one day, you're like, dude, we've got to get as much footage as we can. It's basically that with the Missouri. Like, dude, we've got like an hour with the Missouri. Just unload the cameras. Just get as many shots as you can. But
should we
film all the same?
Should we move on?
Yes. Let's get to favorite scenes. For my favorite scene, if I had seen this as a kid, let's make no mistakes, it'd be the cake scene for sure. But I will go for Casey Ryback's first run-in with Gary Busey, or Pete Krill as he's known in the film. Who sounds like a character from Guardians of the Galaxy. But that whole fight sequence where it doesn't quite escalate, but he basically just shows the soldiers that if he wanted to, he could fuck them all up.
Yeah, that's not striking an officer. This is striking an officer,
Yeah, there was something about I was just like, a great way to establish that you are the alpha male in the room, but still playing by the rules just enough. Like, I'm still a soldier. But just so you guys know, in case it's not clear, if I decide to, I could fuck you all up right now. And I loved Gary. Like, again, it was a shame that we didn't get more Gary Busey and Steven Seagal on screen, because for all of our criticisms, again, I think Steven Seagal is actually quite good in this film, and I would have liked to see more interactions. And for at least that moment, you got to see his physicality. You got to see him act alongside Gary Busey, and that's why it's my favorite scene in the film. And also the cake scene. Yeah.
For me, it was Tommy Lee Jones being made deaf by the gun.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah, because then he like the ring in his ears, and he's falling over everything. He's telling people to leave.
That's when he goes bonkers, because that's what leads into the Saturday morning cartoon speech. So is it like basically just the fallout from the gunshot?
The ringing, it's just like something's knocked him loose. Like it's, I think it's really good. And then the whole just knife being stuck in his head thing.
Yeah, it's amazing we didn't get around to that. And I wasn't sure, it really goes for it. Like, they have that knife fight, and then all of a sudden, again, terrible one-liner from Steven Seagal, and then he stabs him in the head, which is pretty badass. But it does make those moments of proper violence more effective. It's like all of a sudden, when you see the throat rip, you see the stab in the head, has more of an impact because you don't see it for most of the film.
Good with that.
Loves and hates. So my 3 loves to this film. Number 1, Steven Seagal screen presence. As I said, it's my first film with him. I know it's one of his best ones, but he definitely holds the screen. 2, Gary Busey being perfectly cast as the unhinged Captain Pete Krill. We've already talked about it, but he's fantastic in this film. And again, for all of our criticisms, the third one is also an actor, Tommy Lee Jones, in full swinging for the fences mode. That's the weird thing with this film. It's actually really easy to pick apart. It's easy to actually make fun of the performances, but at the same time, I'm enjoying all of it. It's a weird film that it works so well at both ends. It's like, it's both well made and terribly made. It's brilliantly acted and oddly terribly acted. It's a very conflicting movie for me, but yeah, those are my 3 loves.
So top for me is Tommy Lee Jones. I don't know what he's meant to be, but I think he's having a great time doing it.
Yeah, whatever he's doing, he's doing it well. So
the other one is Gary Busey. They didn't actually give him a script. They just said, right, you're a commander on a ship, and they followed him with a camera. They just didn't care at that point. It's big Gary Busey. I don't think anyone has ever given him a script. I think they just said, go for it.
He's the acting equivalent of a dog chasing a postman. Just let him go. Just let him run.
I've seen enough Seagal films to know that I can't put Seagal as a love. Like, it's really...
That is totally fair. I think, again, because going into it, you have certain expectations. But I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that he can be obviously a bit creepy at times, but the fact that he totally pulls off the alpha male. And as I said, like at no point was I like, did I think he was a particularly bad actor in this film? At least, maybe it's different in his other films. But Andrew Scott is the director, Andrew Scott, isn't it? No, sorry, Andrew Davis. Sorry, Andrew Davis. My apologies. He gets a performance out of him. So yeah, that's why I think it was more pleasantly surprised by Steven Seagal more than anything else.
My third love, though, is a Seagal thing, not Seagal himself. The fact that he didn't have his fucking ponytail. Now, this means nothing to you. But
no. I was surprised when I saw this because again, when I think of Steven Seagal, I think of the ponytail.
Yeah. In all of his other films, he's got the Seagal ponytail, and I think it's awful. So my love is the fact he had to cut it off because Navy SEALs, being in the Navy, you can't have your hair more than 4 inches long.
Yeah, you can't be having it. Like his hair's plenty long. This one, he doesn't. No man needs a ponytail. Like that's
even Erica, as Jordan Tate, wasn't allowed long hair. Seagal saw her and said, "You know what? If I can't have my fucking ponytail, her hair gets cut short."
That goes as well. Well, here's an important question for you: has a man ever pulled off a ponytail? Like I can't think of one. Am I missing something obvious? Like, has a dude ever pulled off a ponytail? Like, you're like, oh, that kind of works.
A ponytail, a rat tail, and I'm going on a fucking limb now. If you have your hair in a man bun, get it out.
Like, even there are movies where Brad Pitt, for one reason or another, had a ponytail, and even Brad fucking Pitt can pull out. If Brad Pitt can't pull off a ponytail, dude, whoever I'm talking to, you can't pull off a ponytail.
I would like our listeners to come back and do you know anyone who pulls off a ponytail?
Yeah, because a lot of actors, like, I'm thinking there's a few movies where Bruce Willis, at least for part of the film, has had a ponytail, like where he's playing a bad guy, he might have a wig on, he's had a ponytail. Off the top of my head, I can't. So that is an important question to our listeners. Can you come up with a single example? And it doesn't even have to be movies. I'll take sports, famous, anyone. Your mate, I don't give a fuck. If you can find anyone who has successfully pulled off a ponytail, I want to see it because I can't think of it. And perhaps, like I said, we're both missing one very obvious example, but off the top of my head, I can't think of one. But,
no, I can't think of one. No. I'm just glad it wasn't in this film.
Yes, very much so.
Hates.
So yeah, the last act gets messy for me. Never quite sure what Ryback is up to. Why have they met? The emotional connection is forced. Then they add the odd gross kiss in front of the lads, followed by the somber salute. It's totally messy in a way that like the rest of the movie isn't. I did kind of, again, the weird thing in this film, I did kind of enjoy the end of this film, but it didn't quite stick the landing. It doesn't stick the landing at all. It's a bit all over the map. To some truly terrible acting from extras. The same could be said for many of the generals in the war room who are equally appalling and don't seem to know what kind of movie they're in. They've all been told something different. But the extra work in this movie is amongst the worst I've ever seen. And some forced comedy that really doesn't land. As I mentioned earlier, are any of Ryback's jokes actually jokes on the page? I don't think they are. There's, he gets away with it in terms of his proper alpha male high school stuff. And the whole idea that the guy's like, just laugh because he's bigger than us. But I don't even think they're written as jokes. So the comedy in this film just doesn't land. The unintentional comedy, the fun of just the big performances, that works. But in terms of any time somebody's tried to write a joke, it just hasn't landed at all. So those are my hates.
For me, it was the first introduction of Casey. Oh, we need everyone to know that everyone on the ship loves him. So we're going to have the weird interaction with the bad cast down in the galley where people are dancing. That just felt so forced and just didn't.
The whole hey, Ryback, you're the man, right? Yeah, I know. I love bully bass knives and hot tits. She's like, okay, yeah, awesome. And everyone just responds, yeah, oh, dude, you say the funniest shit, Ryback. Go fuck yourself.
It was odd, wasn't it? The other one was the kiss.
Oh, that should be number one with a fucking bullet. In fairness, that's a massive oversight by me. Sorry, dude.
It felt forced. It felt awful. Yeah. And I had the war room. I hated the war room. I hated the generals in the war room. Yeah. But the one guy I hated so much was the guy when they turned. You always have that guy in the war room. They had it in The Rock, where somebody asked a stupid question about, oh, well, what's the damage? And then you go to the random general in the corner. You go, oh, what happens? And he goes, oh, if this warhead hits you, you instantly reach 10,000 and a half degrees. Oh, you fucking don't. You die.
Yeah, the way he delivers it is in such an odd way. It kind of reminded me, bizarrely, of Gladiators. This is a weird one. Gladiators was restarted in the UK. And obviously, the US listeners are fully aware of the Gladiators, but I'm not sure if they brought it back over there. But they brought back the Gladiators. And when they bring them up, they use really bizarre ways to explain their attributes. They're like, oh, this is, I don't know, fucking fire.
He can lift a baby elephant.
Yeah, or she can run as fast as an angry badger. It's like, what the fuck? I don't know what that means. I don't know how fast an angry badger is. And it was the same as, it's like, oh, they will become 7,000 degrees as warm as the sun. Oh, for fuck's sake, dude. It's all a little bit. What's the movie, that Doctor Strangelove? Yeah. It's like that, but without the sense of humor. The War Room is bizarre.
Yeah, it was really, really strange. Mm-hmm. They were my hates.
Yeah, your hates. Any old titles for this film? Alternative titles, dare I say?
Ooh, you gave the alternative title section an alternative title.
I did, didn't I? Yeah. I don't know why I felt the need to read it out. I was like, alt titles. Like, I think everyone fucking gets that, Liam. Jesus.
Yeah, we got a few, mate. We got a few. Argentina, High Alert.
Argentina always have something. I feel like every week Argentina and like Uruguay come up.
Yeah. Austria, Alert Level Red.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Brazil, The Force on Alert.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah. Canada, Battleship in Peril.
Really? Canada? You're in English. I hope that was at least Quebec. I hope that was French speaking.
I think it's a French Canadian. Yeah, it's got to be. Because it says Canada and Battleship in Peril. It's weird. Czech Republic, Ambush in the I said that weird. Ambush in the Pacific.
That's okay.
Denmark, Hijacking on the High Seas.
Carry On film for sure, yeah.
Finland decided they didn't want to say high seas. They just went hijacking at sea because you can't really have a ship hijacked on the road, I guess.
Oh, yeah, these are all a little bit on the nose for me.
Yep. France, Trap on the High Seas.
Terrible again. Is there going to be one good one?
Finland, a video box title, right? A double video. So I want to know what the other one is. I wonder if it's got to be Under Siege 2. Hijacking at Sea and Hijacking on Rails. Because Under Siege 2 was
on a train.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That was pretty good, yeah.
Hungary, Floating Fortress.
No, that sounds like something you would find in a Final Fantasy video game.
Iceland just can't be bothered finishing the title, so they just went Siege.
Yeah, do you know what? Bizarrely, that's probably the best one of the bunch.
Japan, Silent Battleship.
It's not very. No, don't like it.
Lithuania, Surrounded By.
Just surrounded by.
Just surrounded by.
Well, I'm going to Lithuania in a couple of weeks, so I'll ask him what the fuck they were thinking of when I get there.
Poland, Liberator.
No, not feeling that.
Romania, Sequestered at Sea.
I actually like it. It's a little bit formal, but yeah, I can go with that. Sequestered at Sea. I love the idea of like him delivering, like getting the title of the film into the film. It's like it cuts to Steven Seagal. Looks like we've been sequestered at sea. That'd be fucking awesome.
Slovenia, Sieged.
Sieged, yeah, lazy again.
Yeah. Taiwan, coming in strong. Devil Warlord.
Devil Warlord. Again, for a completely different film. A fun title for sure, just not for this one.
I think United Arab Emirates probably watch, and they've. This is the first time they've come in.
Yeah. We've had a UAE movie title
section, so they've decided he was just bringing in some herbs or something because they were under siege.
That's fantastic. Under Siege. That could have been that should be maybe the third film that never was. I'm amazed that they didn't complete the trilogy because, like you said, like there's this one, Under Siege 2, where it's Die Hard on a train. Surely they had like Under Siege 3, Die Hard on a plane in them. I would love to see it nowadays. I'd love to, do I want to see 71-year-old fucking Steven Seagal just do Under Siege 3? Like, and that's the thing, on a plane, you can't move that much. And I feel like he could still do the hand shit at least at 71. I mean, that's what he does nowadays, isn't it? They shoot him from like the shoulders up so you can't see the fucking derby on him. They know his legs don't really work anymore. So they just cut above his boobs and just have him moving his hands. It's just, yeah, just do that on a plane. It'll be fine.
I'll tell you a story in a sec, but let me finish. I got one more left. Vietnam, in the encirclement.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
So
I'm
never
just
watched.
going with Siege.
Yeah, I want to go Under Siege.
You've never
watched a Seagal film. We've established that. So you've never seen any of his early 2000s, late 2000, like the 10 ones and things.
I saw like a clip of, because there was one where he's in a movie with Mike Tyson. And
I sent you that one.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Of course you did. It's a terrible action sequence. It feels like it should be good, but it's garbage.
There was one where he was, can't even remember the title of the film, one of his directed DVD ones, where he's fighting a bad guy. The camera is right on his face, and he's rubbing his hands in front of the camera, just crossing his hands like this. The camera then pans behind him to show a shorter,
leaner,
longer hair, Asianer.
That guy looks a lot more Asianer than he does, for God's sake.
Doing high kicks. Awesome. And then it goes back. It's Seagal doing that again. I mean, you couldn't even get a guy to look. You pick the guy up the street. Yo, you'll do. Jackie Chan, come and do this for me.
Well, the only thing I will say is there is nobody who looks like Steven Seagal anymore. Like, he's such a unique. I don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean they can do better than the example you provided, but it's quite depressing that now they just have to do these kind of crash cuts of his face and his hands being waved about. But it is what it is. Do you have any facts for this one?
Yep, we got a couple. So one of the biggest problems in the production crew faced was how to give the illusion the USS Alabama, the USS Missouri in the movie, was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean when it in fact was docked in Mobile Bay in Mobile, Alabama. To do this, the production crew created a 100-foot-long barge and a 60 feet high framework on the barge and hung a giant black cloth on the framework. The blackout barge was moved around the Alabama as necessary to block out city lights, buildings.
This is what we had to do before CG was viable for these kind of things. But I think they did a pretty good job. I bought it in terms of, I never questioned the idea that it was out. See, there's like a few kind of wide shots where you can see that, when it blows up like the planes and stuff. But I didn't think that was to do with the ship being in the sea. I was like, well, that's just a stage shot with kind of like models and stuff to make the effects work. But when we saw the shots of the ship at sea, I totally bought into it.
9 of the actors in this film, including Tommy Lee Jones, returned a year later to appear in the film The Fugitive, also directed by Andrew Davis. We've already said that.
And dare I say, a much better film than this.
Yeah.
Not as fun, but a better film.
This film actually gave us Die Hard with a Vengeance, than what we have now. So the film's box office success played a role in delaying production of a third Die Hard film. Originally, the script was born out of a spec called Troubleshooter, about a cruise ship taken over by terrorists. Ultimately, the idea was deemed too similar to Under Siege, and the script underwent several rewrites before ultimately becoming...
Well, I mean, that's probably the best thing this movie ever did, because I'm a big fan of Die Hard with a Vengeance. And the fact that, it feels different. Like, it does actually feel like the unique one, doesn't it? Compared, like, when you're thinking of the original trilogy in particular. So the fact that they went for something different, I think totally worked. Despite the last act of that film falling a little bit flat. But the rest of it's gold.
So this next one probably lets you understand how people feel about Steven Seagal's acting. This is one of only 3 movies with Steven Seagal to hold a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The other 2 are Executive Decision, which he dies in, spoilers, and Machete, though he only had a very small role in the other 2.
Yeah, but sometimes I'm like, is it the actor or is it like the kind of roles he's getting? I'm not saying he's a great actor, but I'm glad of all the films of his I watched this one at least. Although I am intrigued to dig a little deeper into his collection of movies, especially, the one, what was the one you mentioned when he directed it himself? That one sounds fucking bananas.
On Deadly Ground, we got to do it. We got to do it.
On Deadly Ground for sure.
I wanted to call scrutiny on this next one, but also maybe because you've already said if you were a younger viewer. At the time, this film was a huge hit in video rental shops on VHS tape. However, the stores had to continually replace their copies as Erica Elianak's striptease sequence was frequently worn out from being constantly rewound and replayed by viewers.
I mean, I could buy into that. Like, 1992, 1993, when this might have come out on video, that was a time, again, well before the internet, where, let's be clear, as young men, we just didn't have porn. If somebody had like a porno mag, it was like this hallowed, and nobody wanted to own it because there was the danger of it getting caught. So you'd end up like, we've mentioned the stories before about you'd find a porno in the fucking woods. It's always a bizarre, and people would like just kind of like take ripped out pages and stuff. We were absolute savages because we had to be. And, we'd watch like that nonsense on like Channel 5, which was on at like 11 p.m.
When it turned into like Skinamax at 9 p.m. and you had the erotic movie. Yeah.
It wasn't even that erotic. You might get like, I don't know, half a fucking nipple or something like that. So I can imagine for like 1993, if you had a video of Under Siege and Erica and Leniak, and she, that scene is very brief. And you couldn't, again, to explain to younger listeners, you couldn't just pause it. If you paused a VHS, it got that wibbly line shit. It would just look like you wouldn't be able to see it. So you had to just keep rewinding it, rewatching it. So I could kind of buy into it because we were all fucking savages back then.
Pausing a VHS tape was the original GIF, I think. You just had that little 100%. Bit of movement.
Yeah, it was like, I guess maybe slightly younger people would be like, oh, remember when the internet, when you wanted to look at, quote unquote, a picture and you had like, dial up so that it would take ages to load up. It was like that, but the picture would never load up. It was just like this mess of shit on the screen. So like I said, the only way to do it would literally be to rewind and keep rewatching it over and over again. So I can actually kind of buy it.
By the time I downloaded a forehead, I was already spent. I didn't need to see the rest of the rest of the
just
picture.
The thought of it. It's just like, oh wow, far too excited, ridiculous. Yep. Any more facts?
Yeah, body count: 100 people are killed in this film.
Really, it doesn't feel like that bizarre.
No. At the time of its release, this movie was the highest-grossing movie not to have been pre-screened for critics.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Only Steven Seagal film to be nominated for Oscars. Sorry, best sound and best sound effects editing. So I'll give you that. It was nothing to do with him.
No, absolutely. It's nothing to do with any like the deep cut Oscars. But like you said, without additional, I can imagine he doesn't deliver the information. It's just like, it's. I'm going to throw my wife under the bus. My wife's just turned 39, but you can still get away at that point, as I did at 39, just being, the whole Brent thing of like, oh, I'm in my 30s. I'm just in my 30s. It's like, oh, I'm Steven Seagal. I was in Oscar-winning movie Under Siege. What did it win for? Don't worry about that shit. It just won Oscars. It didn't even win them. It was just Oscar nominated, but still, it is what it is.
Okay, so my earlier comment might have been debunked. Years later, Steven Seagal was accused of sexual assault by 2 women. When asked in 2018 about working with him in this, Erica Elienak said she never experienced any inappropriate behavior from him.
That's good. And like I said, I actually thought, last scene aside, that they had a bit of chemistry. I bought into them. I absolutely did. I maybe that's not a popular consensus thing, but it's just like I thought they were good together. And I thought Erica Eleniak is genuinely good in this film. Obviously, she'll always be famous for the cake scene, but it's just like I don't think people give her enough credit. I think she is good in this film.
Right.
And they haven't just fucking pulled. She's not just some centerfold they pulled off the street. She did so many episodes of Baywatch. She was an actress.
My last one, because you just said about the kiss scene. Steven Seagal did some uncredited rewrites to the script. I wonder which parts.
Every time I try and say something nice about Steven, there's always something gross about it.
But you don't know, do you? It's just that little hint. But I honestly believe he rewrote the script.
I think there should be a kiss at the end of the movie. And I think it should be in front of all the guys so they know how fucking awesome I am. Yeah, sure, Steven. Jesus Christ. But that's the thing. For a few years, he got this film made a lot of money. And, it's the Chevy Chase issue, is it? It's the reason he largely disappeared from, like, Hollywood. I know he's been making movies for years, and he's been a cop for 20 years and all that bollocks. But the reason it was just like, all you need, it works as long as you're bringing in the money. But as soon as you have a couple of flops, if you're this big of an asshole, people will drop you like a fucking bad habit. And that's what happens. But in terms of Hug to the Future, so this is where we ask a question, remake, sequel, Don't Touch or Let It Die. I've already mentioned it for me. I'd love to see another sequel. I've not even seen Under Siege 2, but do I want to see Under Siege 3 with 71-year-old Steven Seagal on a plane waving his arms around, where his body double is a 5'7" guy from China? I'm like, yeah, I absolutely want to fucking see that. But realistically, we don't need a remake of this because it is just Die Hard. Like, there's not enough of a good idea. The movie is made by the fact that it's peak Seagal, the fact they've got Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey swinging for the fences. It really is. It's just, like I said, it's Don't Touch, but not in a reverential way. It's just, it doesn't need to be. Yeah. And I don't want to say Let It Die, because I don't feel that negatively about the film. It's very much an early 90s movie. It's fun because of those individual ingredients, not because of the whole. So remaking it would ultimately be pointless. So I'm just leave it be in the 90s. It's absolutely fine.
The reason you want to see a sequel is because you've never seen the Steven Seagal film with him now. Like, and you won't want a sequel after you watch some of his acting.
No,
so
that was a joke. I really don't want to see 71-year-old Steven Seagal fighting on a plane. I'm happy for this to be left in the past, if truth be told. And I've heard, I know you have different opinions on this, don't you? Because most people agree that the sequel isn't very good, but you're a bit of a fan of Under Siege 2, right?
Yeah, I liked Under Siege 2. I watched Under Siege 2 more than Under Siege 1. But this is coming from a guy who absolutely adored. Like, we've always said this before. Me and you differ the way we look at films. This is what makes this podcast good for us. You look at the cinematic experience. You can take films for what they are, like these big box office films. You can take the good and the bad from them, things like that. Whereas I do that, but with these straight to DVD films that I grew up watching.
Yeah.
Like, I love.
You have a much higher tolerance for what I refer to as dog shit cinema.
Yeah. So I said to you in the week, I am desperate to do a Scott Adkins film because I absolutely love him. But I don't know if this is the right time to do like Undisputed 2 with Scott Adkins.
I would have a lot to say about, because I haven't seen many. I've seen a couple of Scott Adkins films, and I get it because I actually think Scott Adkins is really good. I know he's been in a lot of straight to DVD stuff.
Yeah.
But the one that really caught me off guard, the one that really got me into like the idea of Scott Adkins was actually John Wick 4. John Wick 4 is a movie. That is Scott Adkins in the suit playing the German guy.
Yeah, he's fucking fantastic.
Dude, he's the best thing about. Like, I know that film had a major issues. I have a lot of issues with that film because it is fucking far too long, and you become numb to it. And around that point, I was losing interest. I'm like, man, this film's on for another hour and a half. I'm like, as great as these scenes are, it's almost too much. And then they get to the fucking Scott Adkins sequence. I'm like, this dude, and I didn't know at the time that it was Scott Adkins in a fast suit. I was like, who is this guy? He's absolutely. It's not just because obviously he can do all this amazing stuff, and they've built him up to be this big guy. He's got all the charisma in the world. He without question, his is the best performance of the entire movie. I feel like he gets it in terms of capturing that tone better than anyone else. So Scott Adkins, I'm very much on board for kind of digging maybe into his. I
remember you said that, and I think I went on for about an hour of explaining to you who Scott Adkins is and why I like his films.
I think he's absolutely spectacular in John Wick 4.
I have. So I have a better tolerance for those guys, like King of the Kickboxers, No Retreat, No Surrender, 1 to 4. I've loved all of those. Like
the thing is, that's a really interesting one. No Retreat, because I wouldn't even say the first one is terrible. No Retreat, No Surrender is a terrible movie, and you went, I'm going to watch 3 more of these, and I'm pretty sure they get worse as they go.
But they're great. Like I've seen that we said before. I don't even know what the point was about all of this, but we're still in the sequel, so just leave it alone. I love it. Yeah, just leave it alone. I can't even remember where we were going. I think I just wanted to bring Scott Adkins up.
That's fair enough. You're a big fan. You're speaking passionately about him. That's no problem at all. In terms of making a change, so this is the section where we pick one thing to make a change if we're going to make this movie better. For me, it would be, the joke question answer is get rid of that kiss at the end of the film. But it is linked to that. The real answer, it's sort out the ending. I think it gets very messy towards the end. There's good stuff in there, but narratively, the way it's shot, the geography of the ship, I think it all gets very, very messy for the final act of this film. I think it's a bit of a shame because I enjoyed a lot of the build-up and I was willing to forgive a lot of its issues in like the first, hour and 10, hour and 15 of this film. But like I said, the last 15, 20 minutes, for me personally, watching it for the first time, gets a little bit too messy, I think.
So I've been desperate to bring this up, but I wanted to leave it for my make a change part.
Mm-hmm.
I want more of the unrequited love between Raymond Cruz as Ramirez and Ryback. Casey, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. You okay? Like that guy is so in love with Ryback.
He's into Ryback. The thing is, he knows Ryback's just not into him. He knows Ryback's an alpha male. He knows he's all about the ladies, but he loves him so much. He's a sailor. What can you do? You're going to get a few of them on board. And yeah, he is bang into Ryback. And it's quite weird what they're hinting towards, and it's never really elaborated on. But it feels like there's enough there for it almost.
I want more of that stuff. I want to know more about Raymond Cruz and why he's into Ryback. I want that.
Well, yeah, he's obviously like, look at him. He's just such a dude, man. It's like, I bet you he looks great with a ponytail. Fucking ridiculous. In terms of video games, so one of the more obvious answers would have been Resident Evil Revelations. So that's one of it's not one of the mainline Resident Evil games, but it's basically Resident Evil on a boat. So, Die Hard on a boat.
Yeah.
But really, in terms of combat, when I think of Steven Seagal, what I really want is something along the lines of Sifu by Slowclap. That's a recent game. It's on PS5, Switch, Xbox and stuff. And it's closer to maybe something like John Wick. But the combat in that game is unbelievable. But I just want a greater emphasis on Aikido, obviously, because if it's Steven Seagal, it's got to be Aikido. And with that film, it doesn't have, because it's like a roguelike structure, I want for it to be an Under Siege video game, there needs to be a greater emphasis on narrative rather than just mechanics. So basically, I want Slowcap to do the Aikido mechanics, but I want Capcom to do the world building and slightly campy storytelling. I mean, Seagal and Tommy Lee Jones kind of feel like Capcom characters already. They feel like they could have been lifted from the slightly campy world of Resident Evil. So remove the horror, add the action via Slowclap, but get Capcom to reduce it, basically. So that's what I'd go for.
It's been a while for me, but they're back. Naughty Dog.
Yeah, it has been a while. You were heavy on Naughty Dog for I like our first 20 episodes. I feel like every answer was Naughty Dog, but they've not been around for a while, in fairness.
I want to say, and I'll get slated if I get this wrong, I'm pretty sure it's Uncharted 2, where they have the capsizing ferry.
Oh, is it 2? All I remember from 2 is the opening in Nepal on the train and all that jazz. That's number 2 as well, isn't it?
That's number 2, yeah. So maybe it's 3 then. It might be 3. I think it's 3. So but there's the ferry. So you've already done that stuff on the ship where they fight. You got the gunfighting for the ship. I think Naughty Dog could do something brilliant with that.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Naughty Dog. Yeah.
So that's been go to scores and recommendations. I can't speak anymore. This is actually a little bit weird for me because I'm going to say no to recommend.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you've got to be into 80s movies. You've either kind of seen this or you haven't. Although bizarrely, I hadn't seen them, which is kind of weird. But I'm going to say no to recommend. But I did enjoy this film. It's another one where I'm kind of stuck between head and heart, somewhere between 3 and 4. But I've landed on 3. But it's a very enjoyable 3. I can't give it a 4. There are too many problems with the script. It's a little bit all over the map. But it's still a really fun film. So despite the fact that I'm not recommending it, and despite the fact that it's totally easy to criticize this film, it's still a fun film. So for me, it's 3 stars.
I'm with you. I wouldn't recommend it. Seagal doesn't feel like a guy you can recommend.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a tough sell.
It's hard, isn't it? So I'm not going to recommend it.
I mean, I would recommend it as far as you did to me, in so much that if you were going to watch one Seagal film, maybe.
We always have those one different caveats. Who would you recommend it to? Like, I'd recommend it to you. I'd recommend it to Dave. But we're the action film guys. We're the guys who would appreciate this style of film. But you go out to Joe Public. Oh, you got to watch Under Siege. Like, it's not
and that's really what we're acting. It's like, am I going to go into work or something like that, or be on a fucking Teams call or something and be like, guys, before we start looking at the figures for the months, have you guys seen Under Siege? Because if you haven't, let me tell you what, you need to see this fucking movie. No, I'm not going to go recommending this, as you say, to Joe Public. So it's not recommend. It's a 3-star. But if you're interested, if you're like me, you're like, I haven't seen Under Siege, but I'm listening to this fucking podcast, it's worth a bash. It's on Disney Plus.
And it is a 3 for me as well. Mm-hmm. It was a 2.5. Mm-hmm. But as we've talked about this film and things, you've got to push it to a 3. There's a lot that it's still fun to watch. It's fun for the most part. It's just,
we'll put it this way, right? If we got 10 people to watch this film randomly and say fucking 5 gave it a 2 stars and 5 gave it a 4, I would understand both. I feel like, you could have depending on how much you're willing to forgive in terms of its faults and how much you enjoy the performances and the ludicrous nature of just Steven Seagal doing Steven Seagal shit. It totally depends how much you buy into that or how much you enjoy that. So I think, we both landed on 3. I feel very comfortable with 3. But if you had gone 2 or if you'd gone 4, I would have understood. But 3 feels like the sweet spot.
Yep.
Cool. So that leaves us. So that's been Under Siege. What's your choice for next week, sir? It is your choice. Yeah, of course it was.
It is my choice. Well, technically, it's my
There's
choice.
only two of us. If I chose last week, by default, it has to be you. So yes, it's your choice.
Technically, it's my choice, but I'm struggling. So I'm going to give you multiple choice.
All right, go for it.
Of my choices. So A, we do Seagal again, and we do On Deadly Ground. We're going to do it at some point, so we're going to do it.
Yeah.
B, I've been talking about forever. I was trying to think of 80s films again and films to get us back into it. Legend with Tom Cruise.
You have to tell me he was in Legend, bro. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And C, Undisputed 2 with Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White.
That's an easy one for me because, and don't get me wrong, I'm not against doing the other two films. I just feel like Under Siege, you don't want to double down on a lot. Too much Seagal could be, well, just too much. Scott Adkins, I feel like going straight out of this, I feel like maybe we need something. So I'm going for Legend because I've actually been looking for an excuse to rewatch Legend because
I kind of thought I've had it on record forever, and I kind of thought you would pick the.
Well, because we often talk talk about how we've mentioned before, Rob and I 100% agree on 60% of shit. And then the other 40%, we are so at the other end of the spectrum. And I feel like this is a perfect example where how many times I've talked up Tom Cruise as I think he's one of the best movie stars of modern times, maybe of ever. I think that he's just got this almost nearly all of his films are at least good, and you constantly disagree. And the one movie you keep bringing up is the one Tom Cruise movie I don't fucking like, and it's fucking Legend. But I'm gonna go out and say, because I disliked it so much, and on paper I'm like, this is directed by Ridley Scott. It stars Tom fucking Cruise. I should love this film. Growing up, I fucking hated this film in the same way that I just don't get on with E.T. But it's been a long time. It's visually iconic. I'm more than willing to give. I've been looking for an excuse to give this movie another go, and you've just provided that excuse. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation between most conversations about Tom Cruise between us two are usually pretty interesting.
So this is going to be fun.
I think this is going to be a really fun film to go back and revisit. So with a bullet, fucking Legend, man.
So let's rewind and go, I'm going to pick for next week. I'm going to pick Legend.
And then cut out all that bullshit I just said. So it's fuck all that up.
It's streaming on Disney Plus, so in the UK.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
so
if anyone's watching, Amazon Prime, so you're fine, whatever. But yeah, Amazon Prime, Disney.
That's
Disney
good.
Plus.
And just to be clear, there were a few films we were thinking about. We've talked about recently about the one that really jumped out because the lead of the movie passed away a couple of days ago now. I think we really wanted to do Robot Jock, a movie we both have a really fond memories of. But it's just impossible to find. So until we can get a DVD copy or something like that, we're gonna have to put that one. A bootleg, anything to make that work. We are going to do Robot Jocks, but there's a reason we're not doing it this week, because I think we would have if it you can't rent it on Amazon.
Yeah,
you can't fucking get Robot Jocks.
What I love, if people recognize Gary Graham, they would probably recognize him from the Alien Nation TV series.
100%, most people.
Yeah,
I totally know him as the lead.
We both know him as Achilles from Robot Jocks. Randomly, a film nobody else knows.
See, I think this is one of those ultimate cult movies. There is a small but passionate base of people who dude, have you fucking seen? And I think because it's so hard to get now, it's living in the past with these really strong rose-tinted glasses for this small number of passionate fans. And I have I remember the action sequences. Obviously, the robots themselves looked amazing with all the stop motion stuff. But I haven't seen that film for 25 fucking years. So as to whether it'll hold up, I have my suspicions, but we are going to do Robot Jock soon. Only, like I said, we've had to push it back a bit because it's hard to find. So, which is fine for me because, fuck, man, I am totally on board for Legend.
I think it's probably going to be a Christmas one when we can get one copy and we can be in the same room and watch it together.
Sit down, do a live, just kind of record live or something. I don't know. We'll make it work at some point.
I was thinking watching it before we record, but we can watch it and record. That'd be interesting.
Jesus Christ. Do people know that film well enough for us to do that? I don't know. Well, like I said, one way or another, we'll end up doing it. But anything else before we wrap up?
Well, nothing from me. We seem to be silent on the old listener feedback this week, so sort yourselves out.
That makes it sound like nobody fucking listens to this. I'm forget what he just said. I've been Liam, he's been Rob. You've been listening to Hey Guys podcast. I hope you exist based on what he said. We don't have any fucking listeners. Anyway, thank you. Cheers. Bye.
You seem so dejected. Cheers,
So
guys.
sad.
Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Are you